It is good.
Yes.
Good to be here. Usually what my pattern has been when I get to come to Palm Springs to be with you is to leave late on Thursday evening after I've finished my work in Lutheran land. And so I roll into town usually about midnight. This week, however, I was able to roll into town about 8 or 8:30. And what surprised me was, as I rolled into the hotel that I had chosen because it's close to my favorite coffee place, the staff said, "Well, Kenny, you're early." You know, that might not bother you until you realize, where's my life gone? Where the people at Motel 6 know me by name, and they know my pattern. They know my pattern. And then they said, "We have bad news for you. Your room is occupied with somebody, with another guest." And I said, "Well, move them." Seemed fitting to me. But I have enjoyed being in room 202 this time and not room 203. God is good. All the time. And then I spent Friday here in the office with Deacon Jim. You know, he can laugh. And he can make you laugh. But the gift of Deacon Jim is plentiful. There are many. But I'll tell you what, if you ever get in a place where you need to be loved up, where you want to talk about God, where you want to laugh, where you just want to be real, come hang out with Deacon Jim. And then, if you want to have a little shady time, you get to hang out with Deacon. No. This morning, when Deacon Noah saw me, he said, "Welcome, brother." I said, "Well, good morning." Deacon Noah said, "I have something for you." I was like, "Nice." And I thought maybe we should open that in private. But now here is the embodiment of faithfulness. You know that I am transferring my clergy credentials from the ELCA, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, to MCC, and having a glorious time. It is known now within all of Southern California and the ELCA that I have thawed out. I am no longer one of the chosen frozen.
Amen.
And Deacon Noah had this wonderful gift for me that I love. It's all inclusive for all of us. It is the Lutheran Handbook of Lutheran Ladies Cookbook of Sandwiches, Soups, and Snacks.
The operative word would be ladies.
Yes. And what a gift it is to be in a place where we can be real, where we can be ourselves.
Yes.
We're in this season of Lent that I love. And thank you to those of you that wrote devotions for our devotional booklet. And what a treat that has been to read them. I have been very proud of that devotional and have showed everybody ad nauseum. But you know what? It is a gift because in those readings, not only do we get to connect with one another, but we get to see how God continues to move in our lives and in our hearts. And brothers and sisters, that's what Lent is all about.
Yes.
Lent is the season that we set aside to think about our relationship with the living Christ, not the dead Christ, the living Christ. In Epiphany, we celebrate that the light of Christ leads us and guides us. And then we transition into Lent where we get to think about what is it that's happening in my life that can block me from feeling God's presence all the time? What is it going on within my spirit that has me questioning myself, questioning those I love, and sometimes even questioning God? So Lent is this powerful time of reflection where we set aside time to add a discipline or to do something new so that we intentionally think about our relationship with God. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. As I prepared for the lessons this morning, I was reading them thinking, what is it? What is it that God is speaking through these texts? There are many things, but one of the things that I noticed, starting with the lesson from Genesis, is that Abram could be real with God. It wasn't this piety that allowed him to be distant, but he asked God questions. Why do I not have an heir? I have this longing. Why is it not being fulfilled? Right? The beauty is that Abram could risk being real with God. And what happened? God did not stay away. God was present and gave Abram the answer that Abram needed. Right? Whatever that is. And then in the psalm, that we would seek God's face and that we would know there is no reason to be afraid. No reason to be afraid. And yet in our human condition, we experience fear. And many of us have been through situations where it is right that we should experience fear. But you know what? That fear can be transformed into strength, right? As we invite God into the fear. That's the reminder of our song. And then we hear from Paul again of God's faithfulness. And then in the gospel, I love this gospel. These characters, 4 verses, and we get these characters that are just crazy. Herod, the wanting power and control, has the audacity to let it be known. I'm going to get this Jesus. I'm going to get this Jesus. And you know what? The Pharisees had reason to be afraid because, remember, this is the same Herod that cut off John the Baptist's head and brought it because he said, "What shall I do?" And the woman said, "Bring me the head of John the Baptist." But as the Pharisees tell Jesus, "Be careful," I love it. Jesus is like, snap. You tell that fox that I am busy. Woo, I love it. There is not meek and mild Jesus. There is book Jesus. And I love that. I love that. Because Jesus had confidence in knowing what God had called him to do and gifted him to do. And Jesus said, "Oh, no. You tell that fox that I am busy. I am busy bringing God's gifts to people. Gifts of healing, gifts of compassion, gifts of wholeness. Brothers and sisters, those are the gifts that God has for us today." And then in that gospel, did you notice what happened? Jesus goes from calling Herod a fox to weeping over Jerusalem. Weeping over Jerusalem. Because Jesus is faithful to God's call. Jesus knew that he would be going to Jerusalem and would face what other prophets had faced. Jesus was not willing to not move towards the cross. And yet in that experience we see that Jesus was not so concerned about himself. Who is Jesus concerned about? The people in Jerusalem. "Oh, I have wept over you and how I've longed to be like a mother hen and to gather you under my wings." For many of us, that image of parenting can be twisted because of our own experiences. But yet Jesus wants to gather people. Why? Why? To tell people about God's treasure. transforming love. Not to build himself up, but to help people experience the beauty that comes from relationship with God.
Yes.
As I thought about that gospel text, it amazes me the courage that Jesus has. I call it the C word, right? Because it's a word that can have lots of different meanings. A word that can be difficult for us to muster up courage. Because, let's face it, none of us wants to do something that's uncomfortable. None of us. None of us would wake up in the morning and say, let me be uncomfortable. We'd wake up and say, let's roll into coffee. Right? And yet, in experiencing this courage of feeling emotions deeply, there comes a vulnerability that can open us up. Jesus displays tremendous vulnerability as he says, oh no, tell that fox I'm busy. I've got things to be doing because I've got this call in my life. And I'm going to continue to that call to the cross. There's a vulnerability that Jesus has opened himself up to that is life-changing, life-transforming. Not because of who Jesus is, but who God is. Who God is. And yet, what I realize is that this vulnerability is what we need to experience today.
Yes.
In our own lives. This vulnerability to know that there will be experiences that we do not like. Experiences that can be hurtful. Experiences that can bring us pain. Brothers and sisters, I'm here to tell you, if we avoid showing up for those things, we stop our growth. We limit the beauty of the cross in our lives.
Right.
But yet, as we slowly but surely, and sometimes kicking and screaming, dare to feel deeply, to be vulnerable to the things and people in our lives, the grace of God shows up in ways that helps us heal, that helps us move forward, that helps us realize that every single part of us is created by this loving God who says to us, you are perfect and holy just the way you are. And why do I know that? Because God does not make trash.
That's right.
Right? God does not do that. Yet at the same time, there are many Herods in our lives. There are many little foxes that can come to get us off track. And sometimes, we are the fox. Right? Sometimes there are things that we do that we know are questionable. There are things that we know that we should not do because it can be painful to others. And yet at the same time, the love of God says, oh no, I'm not going to let you get away with that. Because we have this thing called a memory. And we remember those things. And yet at the same time, God will bring us to places where we will confront those things. And as we do, we dare to show up. We dare muster the strength to be honest. We dare invite God and our friends into those situations. And before we know, we ask ourselves, well, what was the big deal? What was the big deal? That's what it means to be willing to let God gather us, to put us in a shelter of healing. That's the image of the mother hen, coming to protect, coming to love. That we would dare muster the courage to be honest. That we would dare realize that God's grace is sufficient. That we would dare realize that from manger to cross, that we have a God that loves us enough to remind us that in God we are holy. That God walks the journey with us. It's amazing when you think about it. God's faithfulness is real. There is nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. And when you do, I encourage you, pull out those Lenten devotionals. Pull them out and start reading. Dare to come spend some time in the office. Dare to pick up a Lutheran Ladies Cookbook. Right? Because in all of those things, we show up for life. And we are blessed to know that as we live, that we don't live alone. We are created to be in community. We are created to know that we are inheritors of God. God's many, many gifts. This congregation is in a wonderful season. A time when you will begin thinking about how you will not only share the gifts of your lives, but how you will share the gifts of your resources. So that the ministry, the vitality of this congregation can continue to survive and thrive. Just not be, but thrive. So that these doors can be opened so that people can come in and experience God. So that this community can be changed. Not because of your brilliance, but because of the brilliance of God shining in and through you. Imagine, friends, what it would be like if we could muster up the strength that Jesus shows us to stay on track. To say, oh no, I'm busy. I've got things to do for God today. I've got things to do for God today. And to know that that is right. And so I bless you in this time where you will consider what your gifts are and what your resources are and how you will have them be used in this place. But I also would encourage you during this season of Lent, where are your vulnerable places? Where are those places in your life where you need a little extra touch from God? Where you need to experience the wholeness that is available and present for you? Is it in a relationship? Is it in financial insecurity? Is it in your relationship with God? Is it an illness? Is it the lack of believing that you care and that you matter? I don't know what those places are for you. But what I do know is that God's arms are around you. That this parenting God embraces you in ways that are real for you. Are real for you. Because God is faithful. So brothers and sisters, have courage. Be vulnerable. And walk in the newness of God's love and grace for you. Not only today, but each and every day. And all God's people said, Amen.